Welcome to another episode of Millennials to Millionaires. Very, very privileged to be sitting beside a real estate legend. Drake calls himself the sixth god. We're here with the real estate god, I would say, in Toronto, in the GTA. Mr. Brad Lamb, brokerage owner responsible for billions of dollars of real estate built. Such an honor and pleasure to be sitting beside you, sir. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm amazing. Another day in paradise, living the dream.
Sounds like it.
Right? Amazing, man. So tell us a little bit about your background, where you got started, how you even were able to fathom to birth this real estate empire that you've built today.
Well, it was I can't say that from the outset I saw, this, right? So I took it in steps. So the first thing is I got well educated. I went to university and I got an engineering degree, and I worked for a few years as an engineer. And what engineering gives you is an understanding of almost everything, right? It's a really great general education on how things work, and how to solve problems, and how to remain calm solving problems. And when I was in school, I went to Queen's. In my second year of being in school, I lived in a house with like 6 animals, myself and 6 other animals. It was the real animal house. It was mayhem, but it was fun, right? And we enjoyed ourselves. And at the end of the year, the house went up for sale. And we were paying $900 rent on this house, and went up for sale for $62,000. Right?
What year was this?
This is 1982.
Okay.
Those numbers don't exist.
Got you. I wasn't even a thought in my parents' mind at that time,
Yeah. But you see how, 11,000 income on a $62,000 price, it's like a 9 cap after expenses, which you can't get anywhere, right?
Yeah.
So, and that was common throughout Toronto and the environs of like Southern Ontario. And so I quickly did the numbers and I thought, wow, what a good thing to get into. So I kind of marked that in my brain. I graduated, worked for a few years, and right away, I decided I wanted to be a real estate investor.
Okay.
So I bought a property, and people who listen to me on podcasts have heard this story a fucking 1,000 times. So I apologize if this is 1,001, but I bought a townhouse in London, Ontario, where my younger brother was going to med school, and I bought it for like $32,000, something like that. And I put in a third of the money. My younger brother borrowed money from my dad, and my older brother, who at the time worked at IBM, put in the other third. And we bought it with we each had $2,500. I'd saved $2,500 in a year and a half working and living at my parents' house. My income, by the way, was $21,000 a year as an engineer.
That's crazy.
Anyway, bought the house. We rented it for $750. So it actually was like a 20 cap. It was an outstanding investment.
Mm-hmm.
And we sold it a year later for more than double what we paid for it. And we took our equity and we took the money and we bought 4 townhouses. And that's kind of how I started in London. And from there, I kind of grew it. We had a bit of so I bought my brothers out of that company, or took my brothers out of that company in 1990 when things went very badly. So we did very well from about 85 to 1990. Then the market had a very bad correction. And so I was the one that was left with the company, and I grew. That was my investment vehicle for real estate. It was called at the time Bell 3 Property Management. It's now called BGL Properties. And it's a substantive company now. And that was the start of that. But when I was doing all that, buying and selling real estate in London, my agent, who was a goofy, lovely guy, and I asked him in 1988, so 4 years after I graduated, how much money did you make just from me last year? And he said $75,000. And at the time,
just your deals,
just my deals. And at the time, I was making $60,000 as an engineer. So I'd gone from 21 to 60,000 in 4 years. And I thought, well, that's it. I'm going to just represent myself. So I quit my job, got my real estate license, And initially I just thought I would sell to myself. And I would make that 75 and I'd buy a bunch of property and become a property, magnet. And then when I was in the real estate classes, and people were asking the most moronic questions from this very simple book, which is the real estate, 1, 2, and 3. And I was just like, holy fuck.
These people are dumb, right?
This is going to be like stealing candy from a baby.
Yeah.
I'm going to sell to other people.
Yeah.
I'll be the best, right?
For sure.
So I was very disciplined. I got my license, and I was very focused and disciplined on condos downtown, even though I lived in Oakville at the time with my parents.
That was your niche.
Yeah, and I lived with my parents until I was 30. So I graduated around 21 years old, and for those 9 years, I lived with my parents. And by the time I left my parents' house, I was a millionaire. So in 1990, I was worth over $1 million. And I did that. It's not fun as a mid-20-year-old to live at your parents' house.
Of course, are you bringing girls home?
There's stuff you want to do, and you can't do it.
Of course.
Yeah, so you have to figure that out. But it allowed me to really develop my business as a real estate agent. I had 2 years to do that. And it also gave me the ability to become independent. And the thing about being a real estate agent is when you start, you have no kind of something to protect you from the very tough years ahead. Because for me, I did well right away. But we train people and in my brokerage, and I tell them, like, it's tough. It's not going to be easy, right? So if you had money on the side, you can survive earning nothing for a while.
Little cushion.
And so I didn't have that problem. I started selling real estate my first month, and it went very well after that. But I had the cushion, and it gave me the mental health ease that I wasn't going straight into 100% commission, eat what you kill. That's tough about being a real estate agent.
100%.
So that was the start of it. That's how I got going.
Amazing. So I know you said you made your first million while you were still at home. How did you actually make that? Was that from flips that you were making? Is that just building out the portfolio? Like, how exactly did you make your first $1 million?
Well, so the first year I was a real estate agent. Now, you got to remember, this is 1988. I did 220,000 in net commissions. So that would be like doing $1 million today.
100%.
So I was a top agent right away. My second year, I did over 300,000. And then I was, in year 3 after that, I was 750 to $1 million. And so that's like $5 million.
And these times while you're making commissions, you're
by the
also
way,
buying a lot of property as well, right?
Yeah. And 1990 to 1996 was a hell zone for being a real estate agent. Like, no one made money. But I partnered with a guy by the name of Harry Stinson, who was a bit of a nut, and we dominated the condo market, and we made tons of money. So I took all my money and I invested it. I bought real estate. I was a big saver. I obviously lived with my parents. I had very few expenses. And I drove a shitty car until I became a real estate agent. And when I became a real estate agent, I got what I thought was a good car at the time, which was an Alfa Romeo Milano, which is like a souped up Jetta.
Okay.
But I thought it was the coolest car ever. And when people got in it, they're like, oh, what is this car? It gave me a bit of a little edge, right? So I always dressed well. I always had a nice car. My car never had shit in it, like, beer cans or cigarettes or sandwiches. And it was always immaculate. Mm-hmm. And I made sure I was always immaculate. And so my presentation was always good.
Yeah.
One thing I highly recommend for people to do. And so I got there by, from 1985 to 1990, I bought and sold and retained probably over 50 properties. I was a machine. I bought one condo for $170,000, and I had a 5-month closing on it. It was a resale. I had $5,000 deposit, and I resold it before it closed with a $76,000 profit.
Wow.
Jeez. So I did that. I did a lot of that kind of stuff. Uh-huh. And then, in 1990, that ended because the market crashed. But I still had a good, solid net worth. Mm-hmm. And I had earned, a very good income as a real estate agent. And so I was able to kind of grow from there. And the thing about bad times is the best people rise during bad times.
For sure.
So that time is similar to now, only significantly worse, because prices dropped half to 50% of what they were.
Wow.
And people were killing themselves, jumping out of buildings and things because they had too much debt. And so great real estate agents did really, really well. I had, at one time, I had over 300 listings for sale. Just me, one person.
Wow.
Wow. How long was it taking back then to sell a place, though?
It'd take you a year.
So you'd have a listing online for about a year.
For a year.
Or in whatever publication that you guys were using back then.
Yeah. Well, it was a book.
It was a book, right?
Yeah.
Resale homes, no? Was that not the way?
Yeah, there was no online service at that point. But the thing is, the true test, so, being a great real estate agent is two things, right? It's convincing people to work with you to buy something. It's not the actual showing them property and selling them anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's convincing them that you're the right person to use to buy something.
Yeah.
And that's convincing them they're the right person to sell their home.
Mm-hmm.
It's not selling their home, it's getting the listings.
Yeah.
That's what makes you a good real estate agent. People misunderstand that. It's not about selling anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's about getting the listings.
Yeah.
Whether it's a buyer listing or seller listing, right?
100%.
And then it's hanging on to them.
Yeah.
And you can imagine the skill set you build when it takes a year to sell a home. If it takes more than a month to sell a home, agents in my office are pulling their hair out.
Yeah.
Right? Oh my God, this person's such a pain in the ass. They're calling me every week. Imagine them calling every 3 days for a fucking year. And you hang on to the listing and sell it.
And still sell it.
It takes phenomenal, you build phenomenal sales skills.
Yeah, you must be popping some real champagne after you sell that house.
Well, back in those days, a big deal was a $500,000 property. We'd list it at 5, it'd sell for 4. You just keep lowering it to find the value. It was very hard.
Yeah.
But it built a great amount of skills for easy times, which even today compared to then, this is easy time.
This is nothing.
For sure.
Yeah.
So it seems like now where we have social media, Instagram, and all these other places, people are doing Facebook ads to get leads and stuff like that. Like, where were you getting all your leads from when you first started?
Well, so in 1995, the internet was invented, and I started in 1988. So there was no social media.
Yeah,
internet,
for sure.
right?
No Instagram.
Right. So I was a voracious cold caller.
Okay.
The Toronto Star, the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Sun. People used to list property for sale by owner, a ton. And when I lived in my parents' house, because for the first 2 years as an agent, I lived in the basement of my parents' house. I had a whole spread there, and I hit the phones. I'd make 3 hours of calls a day, and I would circle every for sale for owner or for lease for owner. I would call them all.
Yeah, those are all warm leads.
All of them. Mm-hmm. And I would be the biggest pain in the ass. They could not get rid of me. I would just say, well, listen, I understand if you don't want to do something now, but maybe in a week or so, you're going to get tired of this. You might want to try an agent at that point.
Someone else handle this for you.
Call me in a week. I would call them in a week to the minute.
Yeah.
I kept very, very good notes, and I would always do what I said I was going to do. And that impressed people. So I picked up tons of business by cold calling people. I never did cold door knocking. Didn't like that. But cold calling I loved.
Yeah, it's not something.
And then I also did, even printing has gotten so much better. It's all computerized now. But back then, we had a photocopier. And I had a whole bunch. I had tens of thousands of these pieces of paper with my face on it. It said Brad J. Lamb, condominium specialist, in the agency I worked at in the bottom. And I just superimposed shit like a floor plan or something I wanted to use as a marketing device. And I'd photocopy it. I'd self-fold them, and I would take them off to the post office myself and drop them off and do bulk mail with just a piece of paper with stuff photocopied on it. And I would also run through buildings, and I'd slide them under doors. And I'd also hand do them. I'd actually take a big black felt, and I'd just write on a big black felt, for sale or looking for buyers or looking for listings. And I would photocopy it 500 times. I'd run through Harbor Square and slide them through the doors. You weren't supposed to do that, but I did it all the time because it was free. It didn't cost me any money, right? I did, after I got established, so I did about 52 transactions in my first year. The second year, I did about 75 or 80. And once I got established, I relied on advertising in the newspaper. The Globe and Mail and the Toronto Star were good places to get leads. You run an ad in those newspapers. If you run a $1,000 ad, you get 7 or 8 leads, people who want to buy or sell. And bulk mail flyers I used, and I also started to use outdoor advertising. As I got more wealthy and I felt more comfortable spending money, I did all those things. So I used every mechanism possible in the Stone Age.
It's great because I'm hearing you talk and I'm thinking about like the things I used to do in my career, and it wasn't nearly half as many things. Like I wasn't doing enough. And I think the average agent now, they say like the average agent is doing like 3 deals a year.
Yeah.
You know, so people aren't really putting in the work. I think that's just what it comes.
No, there's no hustle.
Nobody really wants it like that.
No,
So for like,
they don't know how to sell. And my previous job, I was an engineer, but I was in sales, and I was taught how to properly sell people, like I spent a year in training on learning how to sell.
oh, okay.
And so you develop skills and habits. And the problem today is, like, for instance, I would do like 3 or 4 open houses a week. And this is when I was a top agent in the city, right? And still I would do open houses, and I'd sit there and I would attack when people came in. Like I would make them talk to me. And when they talked to me, they understood I was intelligent and I knew what I was talking about with real estate. And they go, holy fuck, can we hire you to find us a property? Because I would know right off the top. I'd know every property for sale in the building, every property for sale around the building. They wanted to be in Market Square. I knew every property had memorized. Every property, every suite number, every price.
Wow.
And it blew people away. They'd be like, I want to work with you because you seem like you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's something that will get you more business than anything, is actually knowing
your shit.
what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right?
Being knowledgeable enough.
Same thing I was saying earlier.
Super
right?
knowledgeable. Better than anyone else.
Yeah.
LeBron James makes a lot of money playing basketball. Why?
Best on the court.
He put the time in.
You put the time in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You put the time
work
in,
yeah.
right? You put the time in to be the best in your field. You'll be the
It's
best
gonna
in
show.
your field.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
100%.
Yeah.
No, 100% without a doubt. So let's shift a little bit into the market conditions today, because obviously properties aren't as cheap as they are now as they were back when you started, right? So let's say you're 25 years old with 25 grand right now. How do you get started in this, in this real estate arena when, the average price downtown Toronto is, I don't know, 700-800K or whatever it is right now? Like, how would you recommend somebody to get started?
Well, I just said that the first property I bought was with 3 people.
Yeah.
I had $2,500.
Yeah. Fractional
So
ownership.
25,000 is 10 times more than I had. So I would. So first of all, I probably wouldn't want to buy a place and live in it with someone that wasn't my family, right? Like my best friend, I probably wouldn't want to pool my money and buy something and live together with them. I would buy something as an investment with them, because you get into problems sometimes.
Of course,
and friends become no friends,
very
less
quickly.
friends, or they get an annoying girlfriend or something, or a boyfriend, and then you. So, but I would say that the easiest thing to do right now is listen. It's a struggle. It was a struggle when I did it. People think that when I started doing this, and then people would say in the 70s and 60s, oh, it was so easy. It's always been hard. If you read a book about anyone who has become successful selling or developing or buying real estate, doesn't matter if from the 20s or the 80s or today, it's always hard. It's always a struggle. Capital is scarce, right? So I would, first of all, if I was a young man today and I had a decent relationship with my parents, I would stay in my parents' home until I was 30. And I would say, listen, I'm doing it, guys. Here's the deal. I'm not going to piss my money away. You're going to see me actively saving money for my future, right? I'm going to do what I need to do to become successful. And so most parents would take that and say, okay, no room and board. You save your money. You work hard. You show us you're thinking about your future and not about today, and we'll support you. And then the key is to save every dollar you can. The first 10 years of your adult life, from 20 to 30, are the most important years. If you fuck those years away by not saving, it's hard to catch up,
100%.
right? If you can get a home, by the time you're 30, you're set. And so, what I would do if I had 25,000, I would go to a secondary market, like I did, which was London. I didn't want to go to London. It's an hour and a half away. It was a pain in the ass to drive there. I go to a secondary market like you guys have, right? I would get someone to contribute with me, and to maximize my savings, I would live at home with my parents if I could, right? Those are very easy things people can do. I'd also change my lifestyle. Like, I wouldn't go out drinking 3 nights a week or 4 nights a week or 1 night a week. I would, and if I did, I wouldn't spend as much. I wouldn't go out for dinner. I'd eat at home. I wouldn't do things like buying $8 coffees, which I know is, people talk about that and they laugh and say, well, that's nothing. But all the things I'm talking about add up.
Yeah, sure.
This is a game of margins,
Yeah.
right? You want to squeeze it down to a number you can make, right? So if your nut is 75,000 to get a property, you got to find a get there, right? And so every little bit of contribution helps. Time helps, saving money helps, pooling your money, secondary markets. That's what I would do. And by the way, it's doable for anyone. Anyone. If you have a job, it's doable for anyone. You can do it.
So what are some secondary markets that you like right now outside the GTA? Like right now, like as you know, we're in Niagara, in the Niagara region.
Man, I think, I think all of that. I think St. Catharines is a growing market. I think Hamilton. I think Winona. I would say like Kitchener-Waterloo, London, Kingston. Any of these. I would even say like Windsor is possible, except from here, Windsor's a bit of a schlep. But then there's Guelph and there's Paris, Ontario. Like there's opportunities everywhere, even in Peterborough.
Yeah.
A friend of mine just bought a development site in Peterborough. He's going to make money doing a condo project there.
Yeah, it's not as sexy as downtown Toronto on King Street, but it's a place to get started.
For 4 years of my life, it was very not sexy driving my shitbox to London because some tenant had a problem and it was on a Saturday and I had to go there on a Saturday and fix it.
Yeah.
Getting rich, it's not sexy. What people see is the sexy. They see you in a Ferrari.
Yeah.
They
see
I
the
want
end
a
result.
Ferrari.
Yeah.
But it's the hard, shitty
process.
time work to get there. Again, LeBron James, I'm going to tell you, that guy busted his butt to get to where he is. He worked very hard from 12 to 18 or whatever it was when he became pro. It wasn't by accident. There's lots of guys who are 6'8". They're not basketball players and not him. Anyone who is successful, at the end, it looks easy, right? It looks like, wow, I want to be you. But the hard work to get there is what counts.
100%. So we're starting in the secondary market. So a millennial right now, they're starting, they get some property out there. Do you think that investing downtown Toronto is also a good investment? Do you think that it's going to get like where New York is right now? Or do you feel like just outside in the secondary markets, that's where they can get the most appreciation because the entry level point is much less?
So I think it's very hard for people in Canada and Toronto. We have an inferiority complex about this country and we really shouldn't. I travel all over the world and I come back and go, I'm so lucky to be Canadian. I'm so lucky to live here. It's such a peaceful country and it's so beautiful. And our cities are just wonderful. Like we have some really great cities. And so I think that Toronto is going to be more expensive than New York. I think Toronto's a better city than New York. New York is a tough place to make a living. It's a tough place to live. It's a dangerous place to live. And I think New York's seen its best days. Toronto is just seeing its best days now. And so I think that Toronto will be $3,000 a square foot.
Really?
For an apartment. I do.
And how long do you think it'll take to get there?
I don't know, but I certainly think in the next 20 years or so, we'll see that. I think that 2,000 a foot is not far away.
Yeah,
it's right there.
Yeah,
right now we're like, probably if you launched a project in central Toronto, good location, be in around 1550. I think you need a bit more than that now to make a go of it.
Yeah.
But we're getting back to that number again where you can make good money downtown developing. But we've had this lull. It's made it difficult. But I think that, there's like, if you go to Cincinnati, which is a tough town to live in, it's not a handsome town. There's a real estate mogul there that's worth a ton of money. But there's one in Kansas City. They're everywhere, right? Yeah. They're everywhere. You go to Sacramento, not a fantastic California town. And there's guys in Sacramento that are the king of Sacramento. You can be very successful in any city you go to with real estate if you follow the fundamentals. Really.
And I think we're positioned well in Toronto because we have immigration on our side. Like a city like New York, I think we trump New York in terms of immigration, even our scale of development. Like we've led with the most amount of cranes in North America for how many? I think almost a decade now, right? So I think
very
Toronto.
Long time.
Say it again.
A very long time.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Toronto's in a great position. And what you're saying about it being 3,000 a foot, I don't believe. Yeah, that's out of the question at all.
When people come, like the area you're in here, it's remarkable. I remember when those were all hooker hotels. The whole row of them were hooker hotels.
Really?
Yeah, that's where you went to take a hooker.
Okay.
Right down there. There were 20 motels. And no one asked any questions. That's where he went. It was far enough out of, it was kind of in this dead zone that nobody would catch you. And that was the where the hooker hotels were. Yeah. And now it's
Right across from
multi-million-dollar
Christie.
condo projects. Cities change. And Toronto's made a lot of big moves, but there's so much more coming. So much more coming. So much more exciting things happening real estate wise here. Yeah. And so this is going to be the center of the North American continent. Toronto will be that.
Really?
It's amazing. So let's transition now. Let's talk about development. So you started off, you're getting properties, you become this real estate mogul. When did that light switch off in your head and said, you know what, selling this stuff is great. I have the brokerage and the team, but now I want to actually build for yourself. Like, talk to us about your first development.
It took a while. It did. It took a while.
How many years were you?
Well, when I was I left. So I partnered with this guy Harry Stinson, who's in Hamilton now doing some development, but he was a big agent here, big broker for a while, and I partnered with him till I was 35, 7 years. And one of the reasons why I left and I went and started my own Brad Lamb Realty office was because he was always dicking around with developments. Now, it was a very bad time, like the early 90s. It was hard to get him going. And I got frustrated him wasting all his time when he could be selling real estate and we could be making money doing that, right? So I was always very adamant about buying real estate as an investor. Yeah. I didn't start thinking about development until what happened is I started my own company. I made a pretty good name quickly for myself at Brad Lamb Realty. And an ex-Olympia, New York. Do you know what Olympia, New York is? No. Olympia, New York used to be the biggest development company in the world. The Reichman brothers, Canadian guys, Canary Wharf.
Okay, yeah. Gotcha.
The whole financial district in New York. They went bankrupt.
Okay.
They owned the Bank of Montreal building. Big worth. They were the richest guys in the world for a few years.
Wow.
Anyway, sorry, I lost my track of thought.
No, it's all good.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so Harry decided to do all these developments, and I didn't want to do it. Oh yes, and this gentleman who was an executive at Olympia, New York, after it had gone bankrupt, visited me in my office and said, "I have a friend who's a developer. He wants to build a building. He wants you to sell it. Will you meet him?" I'm like, "Absolutely." And it was the first really cool thing happening since all development ended in 1989. This was 1996, and I met him. I convinced him I was the guy to sell. It was a 24-unit condo building on Niagara Park, Wellington and Niagara. And we sold it. And from that, I started getting other developers calling me. Because there was a big development industry in the 80s that died. Everyone was gone. Hunter Milbourne was living in Vancouver. Marty Atkins went to Palm Beach. They were the two big brokers at the time who did new stuff. Yeah. And so I was the only guy standing. And so I got a whole bunch of stuff, like probably 130 developments over a period of like 7 years.
Wow. That you were the exclusive broker.
Yeah, I had the contracts for all of it. Yeah. So you had to go through me to be able to get the unit. Yeah. And so I learned a lot about development by doing that. And because the start, it was kind of lofty stuff that did well. And I became kind of that specialist about high style. So I was hired for that reason. I did a lot of the marketing work. I did a lot of the floor plan design, helped with the architect on what the buildings look like. And I kind of became quite skilled in that area. And so one of my clients at the time, his name was Walter Harhay, he asked me, I bought a development site with the idea of selling it to him, right? Because then he was looking for sites.
Where was this one?
It was on Stewart Street.
Okay.
So you know where the hotel is, the One Hotel?
Yeah.
East of Thompson?
Yeah.
The back of that Stewart. So that used to be a hell zone in there. And there was a parking lot there. I bought it for $1 million. Put a deposit down of $50,000. And then I called him and said, "You want to buy this? We can do this together."
You're just going to sign it to him?
Yeah, I signed it to him and I took 10% of the development. And that was my first development in Toronto as a developer,
Gotcha.
10%.
Yeah.
And then I had another client that I was working with. They're called Urban Capital. They're a big developer now.
They're huge,
yeah. So I used to do all their stuff. And David and Mark, I called them one day and said, "Hey, Northern Telecom is killing it in Ottawa. These tech guys need cool houses. Let's build cool houses in Ottawa." And they said, "Well, only if you go in a third." So I had to develop them and go in a third. So I said, "Fine, I'll be a third of the finance of that." And so I became a partner in all that stuff in Ottawa.
So was that Gotham?
Gotham
Was
came
that
later.
later? Okay.
This was like
Early
Mondrian, East Market.
Okay.
Then we did a project.
I used to live in Ottawa too, so I'm familiar with some of those places. Yeah.
We did a project in Montreal. And so that kind of got me where I was involved in development and developing, but I wasn't running it, right?
Right.
And so I did that for about 3 years. All of them went pretty well. And then I just decided I was going to do it myself. So I bought a piece of land on King and Spadina, a parking lot, for $4 million. A lot of money at the time.
Yeah.
How big was it? How big was the parcel?
It was about 20,000 feet, probably. Good size. It'd be worth $100 million today.
Yeah, for sure.
Like a half acre.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
Like a half acre.
A little bit more than
about a half acre. Yeah. A little, yeah. And so, I wasn't super confident as a developer at that point. So I brought in Walter Harhay, who was a partner in other projects, to build it for me because he was a contractor. And I sold him 20%. And then I brought in an architect that I really loved, Peter Clues at Architects Alliance. He does all the good buildings in Toronto are Peter Clues buildings. He came in for 20%. I took 60%. And I managed it.
Okay.
And so we like Olivia Chow was a counselor at the time, and I was very naive. And we was like, how tall can we go? And she's like, 16's it. Any taller than 16, and I'm going to oppose it. So I'm like, okay, 16 will do it. And so we got it done. We sold it out. We made about $10 million collectively. I think we had invested about $4 as equity. So it was a 250% return. Not
That's
actually great, really, if you think about it. But
what were the margins like then at that time?
That building we were selling for like, I'm going to say, 150,000 for a one bedroom, probably $400 square foot, $400 a square foot, something like that. Yeah. Anyway, that was the first building I did. And then I decided I was just gonna jump in at 2 feet, and I bought 4 sites. And at that point, all of my developer clients didn't want to work with me anymore because they saw me as a competitor.
Competition.
So at the time, I was doing stuff with Freed, Urban Capital, Harhay, H&R, not H&R, they're called something else at that point, but they're Mark and Barry. They did like Air Canada Center, those condos, and big developers. And they got irritated that I had the gall to crawl out of the mud and not be a real estate broker anymore and to deem myself worthy of developing.
Yeah.
They really did not like it. And they tried to harm me. All of them tried to do harm to me, like business-wise.
Yeah.
How did you overcome that?
I just put my nose down and I said, I don't fucking care what they do. They blackballed me at certain banking institutions so I couldn't borrow money. It made it hard, but they didn't like it. They didn't like it. Yeah. But you know what? That made me better, right? It made me tougher and better. Yeah.
Adversity makes champions, right?
Life cannot be easier. It's not worth it, right?
And if it was easy, everybody would do it as well.
That's true. And it's not easy. I'll tell you, this.
Oh, no, it's extremely hard.
It's very hard. Being a developer is one of the hardest things I think you can do.
Oh, it looks easy from the outside in. You just buy a piece of land, you get your permits, you get your drawings, and you put a shovel in the ground. Many people don't know like the sleepless nights that
the key is you have to make money.
That's the key. And it's different when you look at your pro forma and you can make money on an Excel sheet.
Oh my God, performers look amazing.
Yeah, but when it's time to actually, put the shovel in the ground and it's like, oh man, the cost of building is going up and lumber is going up like quadruple like over COVID. Like, and it's just like, it's a lot harder than it actually seems.
It's one of the hardest things. It really is. It's there's so many places it's very hard to plan and cover all the bases of all the unknowns, and things go wrong all the time. And
you're a problem solver.
You literally have to solve.
You're constantly putting out fires.
Yeah, you are, and you have to love it. You have to love the challenge and not let it get you down because it can get you down if you let it.
So you've been developing all around Canada. Why does there seem like there's a lot of red tape here in Toronto? Because it feels like we need the development, but yet development is so guarded and is so limited.
Well, there's good things about Toronto and bad things. So for instance, in Montreal, you don't get a lot of flexibility in what you build.
Okay.
You're pretty well told what you can build.
Yeah.
And so you don't get like a land lift, right?
Okay.
When you buy land in Montreal, you pretty well know it's 50
That's the
stories,
value,
and
yeah.
they sell it to you at that price. You know that's
Yeah.
right. So the margin there is really on the development side, not on the land side.
Okay.
In a place like Ottawa, there's a bit of a land gain, right? There's zoning, but you can beat the zoning by going to the LPAT or the Ontario Land Tribunal.
OT.
In Calgary, and there's not much unknown. They zone sites by a FAR, FAR, and they'll say it's a 5 FAR, an 8 FAR, 10 FAR, and you can buy more height or more density. FAR is this density. You can buy more, but you're paying a certain dollar per square foot for it.
Really?
So you can't do big land gains there.
Okay.
The only places I've seen, like where you can kill it with land gain, is Toronto, Hamilton, southwestern Ontario, right? Yeah. You can buy a site in Toronto. Like, I'll give you an example. I bought a site in Toronto for $16 million about 2.5 years ago on Bloor and Sterling. Okay?
Went to the board?
Yeah, it's like in the Junction area. And we just got that approved for 231,000 square feet. It just got appraised for $48 million. You can't do that.
You can't do that
anywhere. Toronto. And the reason why you can do that is, so the most frustrating thing is there's red tape and there's no zoning. They haven't rezoned the city. They haven't bothered to up the zoning anywhere. Right? So you can literally make tens of millions of dollars buying a piece of land, rezoning it, and selling it to a developer. And as a developer, if you bother to buy unzoned land and rezone it, you can do a 25% margin. If you go anywhere else, it's 14, 15.
Yeah.
The extra 10 is in the land.
It's in the work.
And so you can make stupid money in Toronto if you're good at this and you're patient and you're willing to fight. But it all costs money. It all takes money. It all costs money. But if you're willing to do that.
Even to carry your property while you're going to the OLT
that's millions of dollars.
Exactly.
Right.
So to even have that, that financial,
you have, in Toronto, you have to be, when I started, you didn't have to be super well capitalized. You didn't really have to be, you're quote unquote rich. But today, if you want to work in Toronto, you have to be very wealthy. You cannot do it with little bits of money. You need, you need $20-30 million to do a single project. And you need a big net worth to borrow. If you're borrowing $200 million, you got to be worth more than $200 million, right? So, it's much harder in Toronto, but the payoff is big.
Yeah.
And then I'll tell you, in Hamilton, we bought Television City, our first big site in Hamilton. We're building now.
Yeah.
We bought it for $6.9 million. Now we bought it about 5 years ago, but we played around a fair amount in Hamilton. We should have done a few different things with the city. We should have immediately pushed it to the Ontario Land Tribunal. We kind of didn't because we listened to them. They were going to approve our project. So this is what happened in Hamilton. To give you an example of land price. We bought it for 6.9. The city initially said 2 towers, okay. We wanted a 40-story and a 30-story. They said, yeah, it looks good. Then they came back to us 9 months later, 10 months later, and said, no, 1 25-story tower. It has to be short in the escarpment, and you can only put 1 there. What? So we pushed it to the LPAT, and we won 2 32-story towers. And the value of the land just got appraised maybe 9 months ago for $25 million. We bought it for 6.9, got appraised for 25, right? You can't do that in Calgary. You can't do that in Montreal. You can't do that in Quebec City.
And how long was that fight?
Well, the fight itself, it took us about 2.5 years to get it resolved through the LPAT, and then we had to sell it, and we had to, if you do this, it's very complicated going from, schematic architectural design to working drawings.
Of course,
it takes everyone says you can do it in 9 months, but I think it takes a year.
A year for sure.
And then you got to apply for your various scaled permits, and then the cities, every city plays around with that stuff, not just Toronto. So Toronto has a lot of red tape. It's very frustrating, but if you're patient, it can pay off mightily for you because the numbers are big. Like the numbers are, You know, like I have a parcel of land that all in I probably spent like 15 million on. Maybe it's an assembly, and it when we get it rezoned, it'll appraise for like 65, 70 million. Right,
Jeez.
that is an astonishing amount of money to make on land, and it's unique. It's not unique to Toronto, but this way of doing it is unique,
special.
Yeah, you can get these amazing land increases, and it sounds easy. It's not easy. It's very risky. It's a lot of work. Takes a lot of money. You have to have a whole team of 25 consultants, as you know, if you're doing this in the areas you're saying you are. You got all these consultants you got to pay, and they want to get paid.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
There's a lot of risk. For sure.
Most definitely. So as, young developers that are looking to, obviously, hopefully get to your level at one point in life, what would you recommend for us? Like, in terms of building, let's say, a first few projects, would you recommend doing something smaller on our own so we could learn how to do something like stacked towns or a row of townhouses? Or would you recommend partnering with somebody that's established and, like you did on your first few deals, you give up some equity, but at least you have somebody there with a little bit of, net worth requirements when you're going to get your construction loan or carry on or all of these things? What would you suggest?
Well, I had a bit of an advantage because I sat in all the development meetings like a fly on the wall for 3 years, and I learned an awful lot about development that I don't think other people would get. It was like a university education. I would say the best way to do is yourself. I would do, a small project, 5, 10, 20 townhouses. You're not going to get killed with that. It's cheap to build townhouses. It's a fast turnover. It's not 7 years. It's like 2 years.
Yeah.
And the other thing I do is I would find a way of raising money from your community, because the real money, I'll give you an example of this. What I want to do as a developer, if I need $10 million, I want to put in 2. I want to raise 8. I want to give them 30% of the project, and I want to take 70%. Right? My leverage becomes 20 times. So remember I told you I made like 250% on the first building I did? It's like, that wasn't worth it. Like the risk I took, the amount of work I did, it wasn't worth it. I want to make more than that. I want to make 1,000%, 10 times my money. That's my goal. So what we try to do, if we have a site I've had for a long, long time, then I can make that kind of return because the land is so cheap.
Yeah.
But if I buy a site today and I need $15 million, I want to put in like 10 or 15% of that, and I want to raise the rest from a fund and give them a good return, like a 22% IRR, which they love all day long.
Yeah.
But then it gets me on my portion 10 times the money I've invested. And then what I also get is I make the fees selling it. I make the fees building it because I'm a builder. I own a construction company, and I make
managing,
and I make the fees managing development as a developer.
Yeah,
and I also make the fees guaranteeing the loans. And I also make the fees doing all the marketing. I have an in-house marketing company, and then I also make the fees doing all the upgrades.
Yeah, so you just fee out everything.
And I make the fees doing the inspections. So all of that keeps
in that house.
Yeah, well, you make twice the money with all those fees, right?
Yeah.
So that's the way to do it. You want to do that, and then the risk is less. You can do less projects, and you can make far more money, right? But other people's money,
OPM.
other people's money.
That's the name of the game.
That's the key, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. So, what goals do you have today? Like, you've probably made more money than people would make in 10 lifetimes, or probably more than that. What keeps you hungry? How have you not been able to get complacent with your level of success? And how do you keep going? Like, what are your goals now?
Well, there's multiple things that keep me going. One is that I'm just a naturally competitive person, a little pugnacious.
From sports, I know you played hockey, right?
Yeah, sports, but just even without that, I'm just naturally kind of an aggressive person. Like, I think it's a quiet aggression. It's not like something I'm in your face, but I am very competitive, right? And so I like to win, and I like to build things and create things. I have 26 developments left to finish that I own right now that I haven't started. 26 parcels of land. I have about $8 billion of development I have to do in the next, say, 7 or 8 years. And one of the other things that motivates me is I have 3 kids, and I have a wife, and one of the things I want to do is I want to de-risk my life and take more and more of my wealth out of real estate and development into something that's more passive and less work and less stressful and less hassle and more safe. Because if I die, I don't want my kids taking over this thing. It's too much, right? So I want to kind of de-risk my life. So that's something it takes time to do that. So I want to do that. I also have other interests. Like we started a kind of an investment bank internally in my company, and we want to expand that to be an influential investor around the globe. And I also started a hotel company. And I have 1 hotel we're putting through the system now, but we've got about 8 hotels in Canada that we're working on. And that's also kind of getting out of the development side, like the selling and that whole thing, clients and customers, and into more of a land holding business. So we're going to segue slowly out of being a large scale developer and more into a large scale manager of real estate and funds.
I was going to say what your thoughts were on purpose-built rentals versus selling, because I know traditionally you've always built to sell. Have you built and held, or is that, like you're saying, you're alluding to, you're going to get into some holding?
I've always held. So one of the ways I kind of got wealthy, and I'll say this to your listeners, is that before I was a developer, I bought, in all the developments I represented developers for, I bought anywhere from 2 to 5, 6, 7, 8 units. And they went up in value tremendously. And I made so much money I would say I probably made in a 7-year period, 20 or 30 million, maybe $40 million in condos.
Pre-cons.
I had over 150 of them, right?
Wow.
And I sold them. And that's how I funded my development business from those condos. But the problem today is this city is a socialist city. A lot of big cities are socialist cities. It's just the nature of who lives in cities. And the problem is that we have a housing crisis that's only going to get worse, significantly worse. It is the number one concern right now with any politician, and it will be the number one with a rocket, because it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. And so what will government do with rents? Just talk about rents going higher and higher and higher and higher. What will they do? Will they continue with additional rent controls? I think maybe. I think maybe they'll do that and fail and learn that's a bad idea, but I don't know how long it'll take them to figure that out, right? So right now, rent controls exist in Toronto pre-2018, and they exist with the tenant, not with the unit. So when the tenant leaves, you can ask whatever you like.
Of course.
They want to change it. This current mayor, who everyone voted for and should not have, she wants to take it and make it with the property. So the rent control stays forever, no matter if someone leaves or not, which will eliminate any new rentals forever.
Because you look at the interest rates today, how do you cash flow at 7%?
I mean,
you wouldn't be cash flowing in Toronto anyways.
It's a terrible business to begin with, being a landlord, a terrible business, low margin business. I don't know why anyone wants to be a landlord with thousands of units. It's a horrible place to do business. I hate it. I hate being a landlord of residential property. So I think there's no money in it. I think, like, today, if you want to build, like, it cost me all in probably $1,200 a square foot to build a tower today. And I can rent it for $4 a foot a month. And then you take off rent and condo fees, it's $3 a foot. So it's a 2.5% cap rate. And that's completed. You haven't made any money. You built this thing and it's only a 2.5% cap. What are you going to sell it for? You'll probably lose money selling it for a 3.5 cap, right? There's absolutely no possibility of building rental housing in Toronto, period, today. The only possible way of doing it is stick, low rise, up to 6 floors. That cost, maybe you can get that down to $900 a foot. And then if you can get $450, you're at a 4 cap. Anyone who's building apartment buildings is making a big decision, a big mistake. Big mistake. They're gonna rue the day they made that decision. It's a bad decision. And that's terrible because we need tons of rental. So where's the rental coming from? It's coming from this building. I bet you this building's 80% rented.
100%.
If not more.
Okay.
This entire
and that's okay. And it's great. Maybe there's people that have, maybe there's guys like you that have 5 or 10 rentals.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the future. It's like, that's okay. We want that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can be a landlord with 5 or 10 rentals. What's wrong with that? It doesn't have to be that one guy owns a whole building. You can have 400 people that each own a unit and they're landlords and they rent the units out and it's a business. We want that. That's going to start small businesses and new wealth, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't want pension funds owning all the apartment units or BlackRock owning all the apartment buildings.
Mm-hmm.
We want little guys involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they can become bigger guys.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's any money at all being in the big scale, building apartment buildings and managing them. I think that if you buy a condo at $1,200 a foot in Hamilton and you rent it and you put a good amount of money down, it can break even. And in 10 years, you can sell it and you make $200,000, right? With $60,000 down. That's a 15% return a year, which is outstanding. I think there's lots of that available. I think that's the future. It's condos as rentals. Purpose-built rentals are only going to happen if the government subsidize them. I don't see them being viable anymore. It's a problem. Yeah, it's a problem because we need them.
Cost to build is just astronomically high right now. And like you're saying, the rents won't match up.
Well, it's not just the cost to build. So the development charges in Toronto now for a one bedroom apartment are $70,000. $70,000. So 10% of the price is that's just one charge from the city. Mm-hmm. There's a whole host of charges. That's one. Mm-hmm. $70,000. So 10% is just that one thing. Yeah. So if they eliminated that and they eliminated their other asinine taxes, which are not turning into any great city services anyway, but if they want apartments built, they have to eliminate that stuff for apartments and they have to eliminate property taxes for 10 years so you can build something and know you can make money at it. No one is going to build housing for free. No one's going to build housing to be a nice guy. It's a business. Unless the government wants to do it and they want to do it and they want to subsidize it. That's low income housing. They want to be in that business, great, but I think it's better to build housing that people can make a profit, a fair profit on, and have a healthy industry here and not feeding everybody to death and stopping the industry in its tracks, because that's what they've done.
Yeah, because I was reading an article. It was actually, I think it was produced by the government, and they're talking about, there's a chart where it's talking about the difference in net worth between a millennial of our age that owns property and that doesn't own property. It was like $16,000 was the net worth of like a tenant versus like $250,000 was the net worth of someone owning property. So it's like, if you don't cut out dev fees, or if you don't do something that's going to affect the market and allow people to actually get into the market, you're going to limit the economic growth of the people in the city.
That's a really good point. It makes me wonder why, you guys are real estate agents and you work with buyers and you get people close and they just say, I don't want to buy. I just can't do it. They can do it. They have the money, but they don't make the decision. And they fart around for another 3 years and then it costs more money. And you wonder, are they not reading this stuff? Because it's common sense. Yeah. If tenants were $16,000, it's the States too, right? They've done these everywhere, like $8,000 for a tenant and $500,000 for a homeowner. And the tenant could have a great job and could get a place, but they choose not to because they're afraid, or I'm not even sure what I don't have that gene in me that makes me afraid to buy real estate, but some people do, right? And it's a real shame. But the other thing is, we need to educate people. You can be a tenant for life. I don't think we should look down at people that are tenants for life. I think what we should be able to do is tell people, if you're a tenant for life and you're saving $1,000 a month being a tenant for life, in other words, the difference between owning a place, say that's $3,000 and a tenancy is $2,000. Don't take the $1,000 and piss away on booze and chicks. Yeah. Okay. Or on the other side, booze and men. Or on holidays, or a nice pair of shoes, or a handbag, or a fancy car. Take that money and invest it. Doesn't have to be in real estate, but invest it and get it active. So when you're working, something else is working for you, right? The way to get rich is to use other people's money and have your money working for you while you sleep. Well, you do those two things, you'll be rich, right? But that's not what people do. What tenants do is they save the $1,000, they go, holy fuck, I have $5,000 in the bank account. I'm going to go to Cancun. Yeah. And then they waste it, right? Because they don't see that the difference between an owner of a home and paying your mortgage and paying off your principal, that alone gets you ahead quickly. But you also are it's a forced savings. Like you figure it out, you put the money away, even if it's uncomfortable, you do without because you have to pay a mortgage, right?
Yep.
And that's the problem. Tenants aren't doing that. If they did that, you would find that tenants would be worth $200,000 and homeowners would be worth $200,000. But they're taking that 15 to 20 grand a year and they're blowing it.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, 100% without a doubt. So where do you invest your money besides real estate?
I invested so I told you we have this Lamb Capital thing. So I invest in some startup companies and in stocks, securities, things like that. I have a car collection. I don't know if that's really investing money, but ultimately,
depending on what you're picking up,
might prove to be smart in 30 years or something.
For sure.
I don't know, but
you're picking up some.
Can you tell us a little bit about your
and-
collection? We're both car guys, so I'd love to hear what your collection looks like. What's your favorite car?
I think my favorite car is a Ferrari 812.
Those are nice.
Super fast.
Yeah, super fast. It is super fast.
Yeah.
But I have
Is yours great?
I have a nice McLaren. I have another Ferrari. I have like a gull-wing Mercedes. I think it's a 2000. I bought it probably 10 years ago. It looks like the old style. It's the one year they came out with it's an SLS. Yeah. I have a Rolls. I have a Bentley.
Kind of Rolls Cullinan?
No, I don't like those.
That's my favorite truck, man.
No, I have a Wraith.
Okay, nice.
2-door.
Yeah.
What do you think about the electric, the Spectra?
Extra.
This is a problem with electric cars. So Ferrari, Rolls-Royce, all these companies spent 100 years perfecting their engine technology.
Yeah.
Now they're going to fucking throw it off the balcony.
Yeah.
What's the difference between an electric Ferrari and an electric
Lucid.
Chrysler?
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Badge.
Well, that's it, right? I think it's incredibly unfair to ask the automotive industry to abandon 100 years of technology in 5 years and say now by 2030 or whatever you have to be all electric. It's so obvious what they're doing, and it's so obvious it's going to destroy these companies. I think a lot of these car companies won't be around. How do you go from being a Mercedes-Benz? Mercedes-Benz is worth $50 billion. If you look at the stock float, it's $50 billion, 50 or 60 billion. And they have to spend $10 billion a year to retrofit their entire fleet to electric. How are they going to do that? They can't.
Yeah.
They can't. So you're going to bankrupt these tremendous engineering firms in a matter of 10 years. They'll all be gone, most of them. They'll all consolidate. Yeah, it's terrible.
These companies are going to have to prioritize handling. And that's going to be what makes you proprietary now.
Handling?
How you handle.
Yeah, well,
because everybody's going to have instantaneous power.
Yeah,
Everybody's going to be able to get off the
there's no
line.
sound of the engine anymore, which is my favorite part. It's just like
it's
you just
just-
hearing
it's
hearing the
You get
battery
a
hum.
Taycan, and Taycan has the little automated noise.
yeah, which is terrible. We come to that. We have to fake that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a terrible thing. And
What do you think about the 296?
what's the 296?
Ferrari.
The Ferrari 296?
Yeah.
That's a hybrid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not buying any electric
You're an
cars.
original guy.
I'm not buying electric cars.
So you're not a fan of Elon Musk and Tesla, I'm assuming.
I had a Tesla for about a year and I got rid of it.
Okay.
It's a nice car. It's just not for me. I'm going to drive these cars till I can't, and then I'm going to store them. And someday someone will knock on my door and say, those are collector's items.
100% they're going to be.
Yeah.
If not already.
It's going to be like a manual transmission. Like I wish I can get a manual transmission car right now. That's what I learned to drive.
Me too.
So it's
Nobody knows how to drive that anymore.
No, not at all.
In fact, most 20-year-old men don't know how to drive.
Yeah.
Period. They don't, because they don't feel they have to have a car.
Yeah.
Right? And we build buildings now. We build buildings with 400 apartments and 40 parking stalls.
Yeah. Because the parking requirements here are 0, right?
They are now,
Yeah.
But also the parking requirements from a marketing standpoint is almost 0. People don't have cars.
Yeah.
They just don't.
Yeah. You put in bike stalls
Uber
now.
everywhere.
Uber, walk, take an electric
Bikes.
trike, whatever.
And that's the thing, because even in Niagara, where we're building right now, it's like 1.25 parking ratio. We'll be lucky if we can get 1-to-1, but it's...
They'll bend on that, though.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
the cities, I mean, even Hamilton 5 years ago was a bit of a mess. It's very nice city now. It's changing every day. it'll be a magnificent city in 10 years. But they have bike paths all throughout Hamilton now.
Yeah.
Just in the last year, I saw them pop up. So you'll have them in Niagara Falls and Welland, and there'd be pressure to do all of this everywhere. The pressure to get rid of cars. The goal is nobody drive a car. That's the goal. That is the mothership goal for all of us, to not drive a car, to stay within your little 5 or 10-minute walk
Radius,
around your home, and that's all you're allowed, citizen of the world. You can't drive a car anymore, but you can take a train or a subway or some other form of mass transportation. But being able to individually get in your car and just go somewhere and get away, that's going to get squashed out.
Fair enough.
Hope not too soon. Still got to get my 296. Got my allocation coming up.
Did you buy one?
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah. So
it's a nice looking car.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, and I'm treating it like a pre-con, to be honest with you.
Right.
I'm gonna hold on to it. I'm gonna maintain it, and then I'm hopefully gonna get rid of it and then get into something else.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Hopefully I got a
Somebody's
little pickup.
It's crazy because these allocations now, it's like, it's hard to get them. It's obviously who you know and the relationships that you build with these dealerships. But I seen even when the new Range Rover came out, people are selling them 50,000 above list, and they were just literally selling the piece of paper. And I was just like,
Yeah.
That's all going to end.
Yeah. It's already coming to an end right now.
It's the same thing with Rolex and with,
AP,
certain watches.
tech.
It's just bullshit. Listen, that's not the way the world works.
Mm-hmm.
Money controls the world. For a period of 3 years, it hasn't, right? They've been able to create this sort of false demand based on a lot of money sloshing around. But that's not easy money. Like, that's not the way the world works. Money's hard to get. Accumulating wealth is hard to do. So, Rolex will be calling you. If you have a dealer of Rolexes and you said, I want it, call me when I can get this car, they'll be calling you
Soon.
very soon.
Yeah.
Rolex prices have tumbled 20%.
Mm-hmm.
Audemars have tumbled 20%, and the worst one is not Baume & Mercier, but Patek Philippe.
Yeah.
The worst, most arrogant people ever in their showrooms,
Yeah.
laughing at you. I'd like to buy a watch. We don't actually sell watches.
the audacity to ask, we just show them.
Yeah, we don't sell watches here.
Why are you standing here? Why are all four of you guys standing here?
Yeah, exactly. And so, what do you sell if you don't sell watches?
Yeah.
You're just paid to tell people to go
We
away.
have a waiting list. It's the arrogance of those companies is off the charts, and they're going to pay mightily for that. I think all this is going to change. With high inflation comes like easy money and exuberance. There's going to be layoffs, tighter money, rationality to things, and you'll find all that stuff. You won't have to wait in line for a Range Rover or a Rolls Royce or anything else. They will welcome you with open arms, pour you a glass of champagne when you go in there, like they should, because you're spending $600,000.
100%.
Yeah, that's all going to change.
100%. Before we let you go, we want to talk about interest rates. That's the number one topic everyone's talking about right now. What do you think about what the government's doing with these rates? When do you think they're coming down? What are your predictions if you had a crystal ball?
I think that both the Fed and our Bank of Canada, I think, this is just me, are towing a line that they're trying to scare us into not spending money. I think that they are using moral suasion to change our behavior. I don't think that rates will be as high as long as they say they're going to be. I think they're just looking for us to do things now to change our behavior so inflation falls. But I got to say, inflation at 2.8%, if you look at their inflation curves for the last 15 years, that's right in the area that it should be. Mm-hmm. We're at 2.8% last month. So I think that things are a lot worse than we think right now. I think people have been living over the last year surviving, and I think you're going to see some pain now. I know some developers are having some real bad times, and some homeowners, some of our investors are now calling and saying, I got to get out of this condo. So I think you're going to see that build through the fall. I think rates have a good chance of falling in the late fall. I think November, there might be a rate drop. If not, it'll be early next year.
So
I don't think it's going to be a whole nother year after that.
Like aren't there bigger catastrophic effects of people defaulting and people pulling out of deals than inflation going up a little bit? Like, isn't that worse for the economy if people start defaulting on mortgages?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of worse things that could happen, but I think for the Bank of Canada, their mandate is the thing they can influence is money supply and interest rates.
Okay.
And so they're already restricting money supply, which shrinks the economy because money is harder to find. And they're doing it also with higher interest rates because people don't want to borrow. I don't want to borrow money. Sure, you don't want to borrow money at these rates, right? So it is having its desired effect. I just think it's having it faster than they're telling us. I think 2.8%, like that's a really low number for inflation.
Of course.
And so if we see another half point between now and November, I don't see how they could possibly not start reducing rates in the fall. And I know our feckless prime minister is also pressuring for them to drop rates. So it's not just us. It's not just the citizens. It's politics now pressuring them to do something. So I think that when it falls in that range of 2 to 2.6, let's say 2.5, if inflation's there and rates are like real rates are 7-8%, like they may say it's 5% for them, but then you get that plus
of course
the Royal Bank number, which is 2, and then you get a thing above that, right?
Yeah.
So people could be paying 8 or 9% for mortgage money. So when inflation's at 2.8 and interest rates are at 9, there's a big spread that could be shrunk. I think they can do something. I hope they do. My prediction is November is for the first drop.
How do you think this is going to affect prices over the next year? Because, like, for example, I own a bunch of properties in Niagara. One of them I had to come up on refinance, and I went from a 3.5 rate to now 7.5. So my payment went from $1,700 to $3,500. It literally doubled, and I'm blessed to be in a position that I can afford that. But I know that the average Canadian can't afford for their payment to double, right? So do you think now when people are coming to renew and they can't afford that new mortgage payment, they're just going to be selling it? It's going to be fire sales. Like, what do you think are going to be happening with prices in the next year?
I think it's horrible what's happening. I think it's really hurting people far more than I think the Bank of Canada knows. But I think that people have been holding on, and I do believe that there will be letting go of property. Now, I think that we live in a time where there aren't enough houses for everybody, right? So there's this kind of floor to what can happen because someone's going to pop up and buy it because they need a house, right? I think today, if you put a house up for sale in a neighborhood in the city, you get 20 offers if it was well priced, right? Even today. So I don't think that it's going to unwind like it did in the late 80s, early 90s. But I do think there's possibly I think it's possible through the fall for prices to fall a little bit. But I don't think anything alarming. I think prices have fallen overall about 8%, something like that.
Yeah.
And I think it could get another couple of points. But it'll very quickly change. It'll very quickly change. Like, I think once interest rates start to fall, you'll see the real estate market snap back. And I don't think that's a good thing for interest rates because then the Bank of Canada is going to be like, wow, now we got to, But I don't think they look at real estate per se. I think they're looking at other things. I think real estate's something they are aware of, but I don't think their monetary policy is directed at real estate.
For sure.
Even though that's like the average human's biggest expense. Like,
it's killing real estate.
Yeah, exactly.
It is, but it's meant to kill. What it's meant to do is make your life more difficult and expensive. So you have to allocate money for interest, and you can't go in the bar or buy a boat or buy a new pair of shoes. They're trying to get you out of the stores and stay in your house and don't spend money. That's the goal of all this, right? And it's working. It's just unfortunate that it takes it takes a long time. We'll be feeling this next year,
For sure.
right? So I don't think people will feel as euphoric next year. I mean, if rates fall and you think they should feel great, I don't think they will, because I think they'll still be suffering from what happened in the 2 years of this interest rate stuff.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
So someone that, let's say, just sold their house, they have $500,000 right now. How would you recommend them to invest? Getting some pre-con, and hopefully wait till rates fall before they can close on it? Or would you say, you know what, prices are down right now? It's, let me get whatever I can afford on a monthly basis and kind of jump in.
So this is someone who sold their property and would be thinking of buying another property?
Yeah, so they sold their property. They have $500,000 in equity.
I would buy another property.
Right away.
You don't want to try to time stock markets or real estate markets. You'll get caught.
Yeah.
No one knows. I don't know for sure. I just said I think, but I could, if something else happened,
yeah.
I mean, humans, right? Yeah. Humans don't do what you tell them to do.
For sure.
Ever. So I think that you want to stay in the same market. If you sell in a market, buy in a market. Don't try to time markets. You're going to get burned. Unless you're a speculative type. I mean, if you're someone that has a lot of real estate and you're speculating on stuff, that's your business, then I would say that's fine. But if it's your home and you're looking for another home, do not do that. Sell your house, buy a house in the same market.
Even at the rates right now, you wouldn't say spread it thin and try to get a couple pre-cons, or you would say just sell and buy right away. Just kind of get back in the market.
The kind of person that would get a couple of pre-cons, like, so you buy some pre-construction condos, you got to wait 5 years for them to be built, right? You're out of the market for 5 years. You can't buy the home you want. I think that if you're looking for a home, it's one thing if you're an investor, speculator, different path. But if you sold it and you have this money and you want to buy a home,
you buy the home.
Buy a home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you might lose that window.
I can tell you so many stories of people that have.
Yeah. And then they're priced out.
They chase rising prices. When this all changes, prices will rise very quickly. Very quickly. Like I remember a guy, you remember when Kathleen Wynne was premier?
Of course.
Remember when she got blown out and then Ford came in, prices started to go up quickly. We had a client that for a year looked at buying a house. He started at $900,000, he ended at $1.4 million. He lost $500,000. Same house.
Yeah.
I'm fucking around for about a year and a half. So don't do that. Don't play that game. No one's smart enough to time any market. Come out of a market at the same time, get into the new one. Don't do that.
Right away. Don't roll the dice.
I wouldn't do it.
Fair enough. All right. Well, in wrapping up, what is one principle of success that you live by that's made you the man that you are today? If you could leave one gem with our audience that would help them to, be at your level one day or hopefully surpass that.
Well, like a personal trait or just something that you want to do?
Anything that you live by that has contributed to allow you to become the person that you are.
Well, I think the one thing I would tell anyone in anything is be the best in your field. Anybody you don't have to be the smartest person, right? Just be the best in your field. Like outstudy people, outknow things. If there's anything that you can possibly learn about what you're in, learn about it. Become the best you can be. And you'll do well from that. Always.
Fair enough. Straight and simple and forward.
Yeah.
Love it. Listen, man, this has been a pleasure and an honor to sit down and be able to pick your brain. Really appreciate you taking the time out today and, come meet with us.
Yeah.
And it's been an honor. Hopefully we get to see you one of these days on your site.
Okay. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Thanks
you so much.